What's up, party people, and welcome back to another episode of NYC Foodways, your weekly food and culture discussion from the cultural capital of the world. My name is John, and this week's episode is dedicated to MC Paul Barman, the Ni Plus Ultra of B Plus culture. Spend any appreciable amount of time in New Orleans and you will hear the heartbeat of the city, the sounds of radio station WWOZ 90.7, commonly known as OZ. OZ's programming is eclectic, its DJs are wise, and in the estimation of one radio-loving YouTuber, it is the finest station in the nation. What makes it particularly special is that it is entirely listener-supported, and because of that, it is blessedly free of two of the most toxic elements of contemporary life, politics and advertising. And if you don't see much difference between the two, there's at least one section of Jean Baudrillard's often indecipherable treatise, Simulacra and Simulation, that you will be able to understand. Jean Baudrillard, priest of Post-structuralism, was born in northeastern France in 1929. In his long career as a professor and author, he published some 40 books, none of which I'd ever heard of until I had the formative experience of seeing The Matrix for the first time in theaters in 1999. In The Matrix, the hacker Neo stores illicit computer software in a hollowed-out book titled Simulacra and Simulation, the subject of this week's episode. Published in the French in 1981 and translated into English for publication in 1994 by Sheila Faria Glazer, who deserves canonization for her work, this book is so dense it makes lead look like goose down. This book is so convoluted it makes the crying of Lot 49 look like Babar. This book is so interesting it makes this channel look like the best ever food review show. Got 'em. It's technically a philosophical work, but Simulacra and Simulation is really a meta-critique of the dominant aspects of late-stage, i.e. contemporary capitalism, foremost among them the media, the government security apparatus, technology, the social sciences, the university system, and the culture industry, and how all of these and more have constructed a dynamic of signs, symbols, and representation that has corrupted things to the point that what we perceive to be real is actually a combination of simulacra, copies of things that have no original, and simulation, the imitation of the operation of a real-world process over time. There is a lot to take in here. Far, far too much for one episode of NYC Foodways, possibly too much for 10 episodes. So today we're going to focus on the three areas of text that jump out at me most. Let's return to the aforementioned intersection of politics and advertising. Political propaganda, Baudrillard writes, becomes the marketing and merchandising of idea forces, of political men and parties with their trademark image. Propaganda approaches advertising as it would the vehicular model of the only great and veritable idea force of the competing society, the commodity and the mark. This convergence defines a society, ours, in which there is no longer any difference between the economic and the political, because the same language reigns in both, from one end to the other, a society, therefore, where the political economy, literally speaking, is finally fully realized. I know the prose is tough to parse, but what he's describing here is how the contemporary political discourse resembles nothing more than the marketing of products. And he's right. Think of the invocation of name recognition, which could easily be called brand recognition when political figures are discussed. Think of the equivalents of political war chests and marketing budgets. They are, after all, one and the same. The I buy, I consume, I take pleasure of advertising, Baudrillard writes, today repeats in other forms. I vote, I participate, I am present, I am concerned. This is why I do my best to steer clear, in as much as it is possible, of the corrosive effects of both advertising and politics. They're two sides of the same annoying, distracting, uninteresting coin. Also in Baudrillard's crosshairs is the hypermarket, commonly known as the superstore, the oh-so-American invention that combined the department store with the supermarket. This discussion is absolutely relevant to the interests of NYC Foodways and to anyone who cares about how food and the relation of food to humans and humans to each other is played out in contemporary society. The modern suburban hypermarket, according to Baudrillard, is a hyperspace of the commodity where in many regards a whole new sociality is elaborated. These places create an immense to and fro movement totally similar to that of suburban commuters, absorbed and ejected at fixed times by their workplace. When we step into the hypermarket, we are presented with a total screen where, in their uninterrupted display, the billboards and the products themselves act as successive signs. There are employees who are occupied solely in the remaking the front of the stage, the surface display, where a previous deletion by a consumer might have left some kind of hole. When you see gaps in the products displayed on a shelf in the supermarket, doesn't something feel off? Doesn't something feel wrong? But at the same time, aren't commodities, by their nature as physical things, limited in their existence? When you go to a farmer's market in the center of town, I bet you wouldn't feel confused if, say, the farmer had sold out of whatever vegetable was in season, would you? The difference is that we don't just go to the hypermarket to buy commodities, we go to be told, and this is the new sociality Baudrillard speaks of, over and over and over again, that there will be no lack, no holes in the display, that we are always safe from want, as long as we travel the completely managed lanes of the highway to the even more managed, keep in mind there are security cameras everywhere, lanes of the hypermarket. The hypermarket cannot be separated from the highways that surround it and feed it, Baudrillard writes. From the parking lots blanketed in automobiles, from the computer terminal. Further still, in concentric circles, from the whole town as total functional screen of activities. It's all monitored, it's all managed, it's all secure. He continues, the hypermarket is already the model of all future forms of controlled socialization, work, leisure, food, hygiene, transportation, media, culture, a whole operational simulation of social life, of a whole structure of living and traffic. And here's where it gets interesting. In comparison to the hypermarket, located in the suburbs, completely secure, controlled, and monitored, the traditional market was in the heart of a city, Baudrillard writes, and a place where the city and country came to rub elbows. The hypermarket is the expression of a whole lifestyle in which not only the country but the town as well have disappeared to make room for the metro area, a completely delimited functional urban zoning of which the hypermarket is the equivalent, the micro model on the level of consumption. I have a deep and abiding love for the traditional market square, as Baudrillard writes, generally at the heart of the city, or perhaps in a plaza in one of the densely populated neighborhoods. Local farmers, fisherfolk, butchers, craftsmen, and traders of all types set up stalls, selling wares, and the friction between people, between goods, between classes has always drawn me in. The traditional market is the first place I head when I travel, and what farmers markets remain in New York City are the best places in town to go food shopping. But these places, town squares, are by their nature far less controlled and controllable than the state security structure would prefer, and the things that occur there outside of the legal realm, Times Square, pre-Giuliani is probably the best example, are a threat to the power structure. The unlicensed sale of goods and services, not to mention potentially seditious thought and action, typically take place in and around the city center, and this black market of gray area thought crime is a big no-no when the taxman comes to get what's his. So it's got to go. Think about that the next time you get upset when there are no paper towels at Walmart. Technological advancement and the crippling alienation that follows is another target of Baudrillard's. He provides a fascinating breakdown of technological progression vis-a-vis tanning of all things. Check this out. The stage of the body changes in the course of an irreversible technological progression from tanning in the sun, which already corresponds to an artificial use of the natural medium, that is to say, making it a prosthesis of the body, to domestic tanning with an iodine lamp, to tanning with pills and hormones, and finally to tanning by intervening in the genetic formula. Interesting, right? At every stage we feel we are getting closer to our goal, being tan, but at what cost? The internal feeling we are chasing, whatever feeling one gets when they are tan, is only achievable through more and more extreme external means, thereby increasing our reliance on something outside of ourselves with the stated goal of changing what is inside. And as we all know, there is no external solution for what is so obviously an internal problem. The prostheses of the industrial age, Baudrillard writes, are still external, exotechnical. Those that we know have been subdivided and internalized, esotechnical. We are in the age of soft technologies, genetic and mental software. Think of the pills advertised as increasing brain activity, the people crowing about the benefits of microdosing, the scientific advances in gene therapy. The deeper our man-made technology burrows, the more ourselves are distanced from our bodies. We're nearly done here, folks, so please bear with me. In Simulacra and Simulation, Baudrillard presents himself pretty much as the anti-Orwell in terms of form, function, style, and substance. I had some reservations about covering it, but there's more than enough brilliance in these pages to make talking at you about it worthwhile. It really is a special book, and it deserves special attention. Anyone who has traversed the dangerous territory of literary and or film theory will find much that is familiar here, and I recommend the chapter The Animals, not discussed in this episode, to anyone who eats meat or anyone who doesn't. I think we'll let this not really quotable Frenchman play us out here today, who in one paragraph presaged the rise of the internet, the use of online avatars, and social media, YouTube included, as the dominant form of communication in the current era. Take it away, B. It is the fantasy of seizing reality live that continues, ever since Narcissus bent over his spring, surprising the real in order to immobilize it, suspending the real in expiration of its double. You bend over the hologram like God over his creature. Only God has this power of passing through walls, through people, and finding himself immaterially in the beyond. We dream of passing through ourselves and of finding ourselves in the beyond. The day when your holographic double will be there in space, eventually moving and talking, you will have realized this miracle. Of course, it will no longer be a dream, so its charm will be lost. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week for another episode of NYC Foodways. Peace.